Tar Matey, Chapter 17, Lesson 3 here, and we'll be talking about this issue of should a citizen support a government during wartime. In specifically, we're talking about the Vietnam War, aren't we, mateys? And what we're going to be seeing here are two things. One of them is this idea of something called linkage and Vietnamization. The other one is this real permanent distrust of government we're going to be having here over this issue in Vietnam. So how do we have this? I can't even keep that up. So how do we even have all of this play out, right? We know Richard Nixon wins election in 1968, and he promises peace with North Vietnam. We know that he says we're going to have peace with Vietnam, but the way he says it, of course, remember, is that we're going to have peace with honor. We're going to have peace here in Vietnam in a way that is going to make sure that America doesn't lose this war, but that we're done fighting it, right? We don't have to win it, but we're not going to lose it. We're just going to be done fighting it. So he starts to ask his advisor, Henry Kissinger, and Kissinger is this guy right here, by the way, right above my head. That's Henry Kissinger right up there. He's a very funny German accent. And Henry Kissinger is going to look to improve relations. And here's his clever idea. He says, you know what I know, Mr. President Nixon, that North Vietnam is getting most of its supplies and resources from two places, right? From the Soviet Union and China. What if we, Mr. President, what if we become better friends with the Soviets and with China, and we convince them that as better friends, it's to their advantage to stop the flow of supplies to Vietnam? Could be a way to get around this whole Vietnam War thing. It might make getting out of the war easier. Nixon says, "Oh, it's brilliant. I love that idea, Kissinger. That's fantastic. Pursue it right away." And so Kissinger begins to pursue this policy of linkage with the Soviet Union and with China. In fact, for the first time in decades and decades and decades, an American president actually goes to China. Nixon actually goes to China, visits with the premier of China, a guy named Mao Zedong, in an attempt to convince them to stop supporting North Vietnam. The second thing he does at the same time is a policy called Vietnamization. And the idea here is that America in 1968 has a ton of troops in Vietnam, and you can see it right there, a ton of troops in Vietnam. And the idea here is, if we have a ton of troops in Vietnam, well, why don't we slowly lower the number of troops in Vietnam? And you can see my little pointer right over there to the right, kind of running down the slide here. And as we slowly lower the number of troops we have in Vietnam, what we're actually doing is raising the number of troops that the South Vietnamese have to use to do the fighting. We're putting more of the fight on them as we come down. South Vietnamese responsibility goes up. And this, again, should allow America to withdraw. If the war was lost, it's not us doing the losing, it's the South Vietnamese, because America is slowly withdrawing. So we do a variety of things here to start this process of trying to get out of Vietnam peace with honor. We leave, but we don't lose. We leave on our terms.